Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at SPL action. This week, I'm joined by my guest analyst, Alphajackal, as well as our normal analysts, Wraithyn and Frost. Later on, we'll have an interview with the support from Obey, the one and only Inbound. But first, we're here to talk about the games from last week. So let's start with SSG versus PK. And we're probably going to talk about Amaterasu a lot during this week because there are a lot of great Ama sets. But we got to talk about it with sort of the person who started this whole trend, which I think is Nika. I don't think you can give Nika Amaterasu anymore in the solo lane.
I don't think you can give anybody Amaterasu anymore in the solo lane. Just has fantastic control over the early game, scales extremely well. One of the best scaling warriors in the game in terms of the impact that she has, especially. Yeah. And you're giving that to a team which loves to run double auto attack based gods. Mm-hmm. It's just sometimes even triple auto attack based gods. If Cherry is going to pick up the gods that he did, like Kali or the Erlang Shen, it's just nuts to give that extra bit of attack speed boost. It's like giving them the Fafnir as well if they really wanted it, but on steroids in the solo lane.
Sure. Right, Frost, any thoughts?
That was a stomping.
Yeah, definitely.
The way that build is atrocious on that character. So to the point where it was at the start of the phase, we had the new items. We had Nika did play Amaterasu. I saw Ducky doing it in ranked. I saw FineOK pull it out for a game as well. But Nika does it again, even despite like an upcoming nerf and a few item changes. Berserkers, Shoguns, attack speed boots, and then add whatever you want. Throw in a sledge in there. Something's just so dominant about that build. He's been soloing Gold Furies, Phoenixes. I was going back for that video watching. He just walks up to Phoenixes. Whether there's a team there or not, he just walks up to it. None of his own minions. And he just starts smacking away at it.
Even more so with the Enhanced Fire Giant, I imagine.
Enhanced Fire Giant. He's got this mitigations on the 2. He could just do whatever he wants.
Sure. Kind of you alluded to it being kind of a stomp for PK. What does PK have to do to sort of play up against these top teams?
I think if you're having a look at their draft as a whole in Game 1 and Game 2 of this set, it looks like it's different. You know, there's the two of the same picks in solo and mid, but the other 3 gods were different. I'd argue that they fill pretty much the exact same role. They drafted what is essentially the exact same composition. Their jungler is a bit more difficult to lock down, but is still there just to provide damage, not really too much CC and setup. For Paul, it's just there to complement Paul's burst potential. The support, quite annoying, just in the face of the ADCs a lot, tries to slow them down a fair bit. Then Zapman's playing a safe crit-based hunter in a meta that doesn't really suit crits all too well. We see a lot of ADCs going in for this attack speed kin size build these days.
Sure.
It's pretty much the exact same composition, just with a few very minor twists. And they didn't. And the worst part is it didn't really react to things that happened in the first game. I mean, Dardez, yes, they took away the Jing Wei from him, but they allowed him to play Cupid, an even more effective hunter in the mid lane, I would add.
Sure. Frost, right?
I think this might have been a bit like PK kind of not doing their homework. In a sense, we've said that SSG does have their sort of meta tangent that they run. So it's their own style. It's the way that they want to play. But it's also kind of obvious. Even PBM said it in one of his videos. He feels SSG is kind of one-dimensional. PK just looked like they weren't prepared for it. At the start, I could kind of understand with drafting, say, like a Kumba, really good in the auto attackers. But then after that, we've got the picks, we've got the builds, we've got Kazembos and the auto attackers. But he goes for a really tanky build. There's no disruption there. He's not going to kill anybody. Auto attackers are... If you can't actually kill them outright, they just hit you through the damage. They hit you through your sustain, whatever it is that you have. And there's no actual attempt to stop it. I think we are in a dive meta. And instead of picking a dive comp or a comp to match it, PK tried to put up a wall. That just didn't work out.
Sure.
I also don't really... I don't say I don't like it, but I didn't like them going back to Evo for the second game, just because, like I said, the drafting it's pretty much a very similar composition. And it's better in the second game than it was the first, just because the CC Immune ultimate sort of helps him get away from Cupid's ultimate.
Right.
But he has to get close to everybody to do the damage. And by the time he gets close to do said damage, he's dead.
Mhm.
I much prefer to see Paul on more of a long-range mage for this sort of set.
You think that we see some of this drafting and pick and bans as a result of trying to maybe ban out Dardes? Like we see the Afro, Hera, Rama ban in Game 2, similar bans in Game 1 early on especially. Is that... I think we've talked about this before. It doesn't really seem particularly effective to even try to ban out Dardes because, he just ends up playing Jingwei or something like that, right?
But who do you try and ban out on Space Station?
I agree.
Their couples are insane.
If you're going to try and ban anyone out, I think it'd be Cherry. Not to say that he's the weakest link, but sort of he shines so well on the characters that he really, really wants that him playing meta is almost a detriment to them.
I still think, though, Cherry is probably very good at meta cards, right?
Yeah, we talked about it like 2 weeks ago after Dardes just absolutely wrecked house on that Hera. And we had that conversation, and it kind of came to fruition where they spend so much time trying to ban out Dardes, or so many picks trying to ban out Dardes, that it just opens up the rest of the team to play whatever the hell they want. Like they literally, there was no restriction there, I feel, from anything anybody else is uncomfortable on, and they just put Dardes in something safe, and he's fine.
Let's see, maybe they should try and go down the Cherio route, just because he does have good impact at the early game 9 times out of 10. And if you can stop him having that good impact, you may have a chance to try and get the early game lead yourself. And with the composition that PK sort of had, that sort of early lead would have really benefited them. They just couldn't get it.
I'd say for this phase, at the start of the last one too, if anyone's going to be the weak point for SSG, it's going to be either Vote, but even with all the doubting where I go, SSG, unless Vote does something stupid, Vote's actually kind of come into his own now. I think he's found his pace.
Sure.
Cherry was also kind of an odd point for me, where if he didn't get the character that he wanted for a certain comp, because it is somewhat one-dimensional, he tries to sort of pick something else into it that may not practically relate to it, sort of, his Kabrak and Guardians. He doesn't whip out other junglers like any traditional junglers. He whips out a Guardian. I think he goes through his set of like, these are the characters I like, and then there's meta gods. Take away the ones he likes, and then maybe one of those just doesn't fit in the comp too well.
All right, guys, final thoughts on this set before we move on to Sanguine versus Renegades?
Space Station are looking like the complete package nowadays. It took them a fair bit to get started. I think they were one of the slowest starters at the beginning of the season, but they're showing exactly why some of them tipped them for, potentially winning SWAT 1 Championship at the end of this season.
Sure. All right, moving on to SNG versus RNG. A bit of a tough set for Renegades after benching Solar Troll, and I think that's basically where we have to start here. What do you guys think of this? Is this sort of maybe just something to get Solar Troll in a better mindset going for the future? Or, I think he's going to be playing again in this week's games, if I'm not mistaken. So it just seems like a 1 week thing. What were your thoughts on the benching?
Is he?
I think so. I saw on his stream title that it sort of looked like he was not benched anymore. And I want to say that I saw that maybe yesterday.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if it's been official or anything.
No, I'm here digging like some paparazzi.
I haven't seen anything official about it. But
Okay. Maybe I'm just speaking out of my league here.
I mean, it's a good conversation point to have. There's the two side branches. There's one side, he's back on the team after 1 week off. The other side, he's benched a bit more permanently. If he's been just benched for the week and he's come back into the team, then that's obviously just been a massive wake-up call to him, for him to look to improve the issues that were stopping him from being in the team for this last couple of games. At which point, good work to him, good on the team for recognizing the fact that he has, just tried to make amends for this issue, and tried to make amends for the environment that he was most likely going to be creating at that point. But on the other hand, if he's still looking to be, out of the squad for this next week, maybe the next few weeks, it comes to the point where you have to realize that the amount of practice that they will have with Row at that point, it would almost be better suited for them to keep Row on as the main roster going into the Smite World Championship, going into that second phase finals if they do qualify for it. Just because you're trying to get Solo Troll back up to speed at the end of the phase, and it could be just too short of a time.
Maybe. I didn't even consider that. What are your thoughts on the benching Frost or Wraith?
I think it's a good move. I think, it's unfortunate, right? He was certainly... I think in each of the games that he played in that I've seen, he's performed well. I think, except for there was one where it was against Ghost where he had a great Thor game and then the next game he didn't, right? And like that was it. Right. But other than that, he's been consistent. He's been performing well. I'm a little discouraged to hear that it got to the point where he had to be benched.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think if this was just like the regular season and everything was normal, I think I would be a lot more critical of it.
Sure.
But, and I hate to do the COVID excuse or anything like that, but, it's impacting a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Completely locked up. You get frustrated with the way things are. Every day is blending together. And on top of that, you're one of the bottom 3 teams, even though you feel like you're playing well. Like, I don't want to excuse his behavior, but I think it's, even personally, like, right? Like my motivation, I'm snappier. Things like that. I think it affected everybody differently, and I would love to be able to blame it on that because he's played well and has not been a problem from what I understand on other teams that he's been on.
Sure.
But I think taking time off, coming back, apologizing, realizing like, you're never, ever, ever going to get another shot if you get thrown off a team for your attitude. You will never play again. Look at Divios, right? Nobody's putting Divios. Divios could be the best player in the world. He's never playing again. Nobody wants that. And so hopefully he learned his lesson. I sent him a little DM. He and Laz were up at the house working out with me a couple weeks ago, and I got to know him a little bit better. Tell him to pick his head up, get back in it. I think you hear a lot of this stuff at lower end teams, like general frustration.
Sure.
But again, I'm glad that he's tried to work things out, and I hope he's back in this week.
Any thoughts from you, Frost, about the benching?
I think it's got to do with his mental. I don't know if that was the choice to make. Like on one hand, he's very talented. I don't think he's a shot caller. Even from the start, this team, I cannot put my finger on which one of them would be the suitable shot caller. Yes, I say Jake, but he's the newest one. He's got his own play style that they've not so much castrated, but he's not playing, what he's known for, and that fire just doesn't seem like it's there. It's almost like he's got on adult shoes when he used to have his Heelys and just flying around, making circles around everybody. This is, he kind of brings the question though. Is it a take a break, find your motivation? We saw in League of Legends, Doublelift did that. Or is it, we need to start thinking about how we're going to win? We need to find a new player. We need to swap out now, because then we're going to have enough time to actually make an impact for Worlds. Because as it gets closer there, you start with the attitude of, okay, we're learning, we're improving, we're not the best, we're nowhere near it, but we'll get there. Time starts ticking, keeps going. You've not really left the ground much. That starts playing with your mental. And I know SOT is super competitive. He's been on some highs. He's been on some great teams.
Sure.
I don't know if this is going to be a wake-up call for him. It might kick that desire back in as well, to sort of just kind of go back to your ex-girlfriend. But I think maybe in the end, he deserves to be on a different team. I don't know what the environment is for it. I don't know if he can find a different team.
I mean, that's the unfortunate situation, is that we can only really speculate what the true reasons behind it were, what's the exact impact of it was. And it's going to take a long time for it all to really filter out, be that through official sources or unofficial sources. But I don't know. I sort of am leaning more towards the side of Frost at this point because I personally didn't know Solo Troll that well, but obviously you guys being over in North America, you guys have played with him, talked to him a bit more than I have done, and it is refreshing to see that sort of insight. And I think comparing it to Doublelift is a really strong, it's a really strong metaphor, I feel.
Sure. I just wanted to ask you, AJ, while we got you here, have you ever had any situations maybe that were like this, or on any of the teams you were on, and how did that manifest itself, and what happened? Do you have any insight like that?
I know Wolfie was a rager. He used to be a rager.
Wolfie used to be a rager. Vote used to be a massive rager as well. In fact, he, at the very beginning of Rival, he was one of the most easily tilted people on the planet. He gives up first blood on the lane, and you don't hear the end of it. He loses a few creeps and dies because of it. You don't hear the end of it until the end of the game. And there weren't talks about benching anybody or replacing anybody, but there were talks had where people said they were quite frustrated, quite upset with the fact that people were tilted and it was sort of like ruining the environment. But we all went into those talks together rather than sort of having it just separated from one person. And we all worked on it as a team rather than going into it going, you need to improve your attitude or you're going to get kicked. We said, okay, this sort of stuff is an issue. Is there anything that's potentially making you this way? Is there something we can do to help? Do we need to just go into a bit of mindset things? We need to take a short break as a team just to try and reset some of the mentality. And it always worked out. And you see, Vote's probably one of the hardest people to tilt on SSG at this point. And
Sure.
Wolfie got his wake up call at Season 5 Worlds. That's a story for a different day. But he is I don't think he rages and tilts at all these days.
Sure.
What about leadership? Was it hard to get any of them to step up?
No, because I went into that team and they had already been playing together for a good split, and everybody sort of knew how the shot calling worked. Everybody knew how to do it. It was just a bit of tinkering and figuring out just how to streamline the process and how to make it more effective. Because a lot of the things that teams do to begin with is they give out too much information. They take too long to hear the information. So it's just cutting down the excess and putting it into almost like a very rigid system to get the vital information across quickly to the right people. That's all that needed fixing. And then here on the Renegades, I firmly believe that the shot caller is going to be Barracuda. They are the two most experienced players on the team. But back from the SSG days, the short time we had Veneno on the team, when I was there, he was a good shot caller. He wasn't the designated shot caller for the team. We were still trying to figure out who to put in that place. But he has a way of looking at the game that is far and above one of the best ways that I've seen of looking at the game. And if they aren't using sort of Veneno's mindset and Veneno's playstyle and game plan to their full advantage, I think that could be serving Renegades a bit of a detriment.
Well, now that we've talked about the benching for a little while, I guess it's only right that we at least mention the set a little bit too. And I hate to say it, but they picked on Ro a lot, the Seguin, the Vamos boys, and it was pretty lopsided game 1, a bit closer game 2. Anything that stood out to you guys about this set?
Ro kind of held his own. To his,
I thought he did fine.
Sure. Very well.
I think he did well to. Every time he stepped in, he's done well enough to be 0. Sometimes it feels like he could be +1, but he's never actually been a detriment. I just know you don't have a win condition in that regard.
Right.
You're in the SPL. You're playing for everything. Everyone has to try and be a +1. If that's it, just for this team, him being new, swapping in, that just made it so that Sanguine has 5+1s, and RNG only had 4.
Right.
And there isn't really too much to talk about
Sure,
in this set.
sure.
Avatar also got picked on both occasions. Yarkor did extremely well. They also had row one very defensive gods, I would say. Ones that don't necessarily win the lane very easily, but do have good impact in the late game. And that's probably by design, just give him something that he's comfortable with, give him something that he can, get back up to speed on. But they came up against really difficult opposition to do that against, where you can't really give Sanguine any free lanes whatsoever. And it was just unfortunate that they kind of had to allow Row the time.
Sure.
Yar carry.
Yeah, the Yar carry.
Yeah.
Can't give him a free lane.
Nope, can't give any of them a free lane.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst one, though. Once the solo laner starts roaming early, you're just
And I think I have to mention it since we already talked about Amma, but Yarkor, another one of these Amma abusers, I believe.
Yarkor abuses everybody with every god. I don't think I've seen him look weak on anything this season.
That's true. He has been pretty good in the solo lane.
Very consistent.
I think a bigger thing also to talk about is the fact that in this set, Cthulhu made it all the way down to second set of bans. Both games didn't get picked up either time. Yep. Are we finally starting to see the decline of Cthulhu?
Maybe.
I think he just causes too much disruption to say that just yet.
Sure.
I'm being honest. I think you could give that god no damage, and he's still obnoxious.
He is still dumb.
His ultimate, he can knock you up. He can heal his team, chase you down. He can body block everything. I don't know. He's this giant disruptive meat shield, and I feel like he could do no damage at all, and he would still be good.
Yeah, it's odd that the Renegades didn't at least pick it up themselves, because Ro's known for, the Guardian solo laners, and he's the one that kind of showed, hey, he's not a bum. He can play a really good Yorm. Cthulhu's just a way better Yorm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of strange that he just went for Amaterasu, or not Ama, went for
Artio and
right?
Artio,
yeah. I think he went for Artio and then a warrior.
He went to Odin game one.
Yeah, Odin. That's right.
Odin. Ooh, the Odin game that was ugly.
Yeah,
that was an ugly game.
I mean, I kind of respect the pick, given that they had Amaterasu, Pele, and the Ram. 3 gods that kind of do find it a bit difficult. And if Sheeta's already used his leap on the Persephone, then it's sort of a big trap. The cage can also be used to block out the ball of death from Persephone.
Sure.
So I don't mind the pick. It's just I think Wraithyn put it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game.
Yeah,
I mean, it didn't like it. The other thing is like I feel like Ro's strategy the whole weekend was, I know I'm going to be behind. So what can I pick where when I'm 3 levels down, I can still have an impact, right? You hit a fat Jing ult, doesn't matter. You can be level 9 at 30 minutes. You hit a fat Jing Chen ult, everybody dies.
Yeah.
You hit a good Odin ult, everybody dies. It's 5 autos to take down those walls, whether he's level 10 or level 20. Right? Still 100% anti-healing. It still locks people in. Artio, boatloads of CC, decent survivability, cripple, all that good stuff. I think the stun duration is the only thing that you get if you're lose out on if you're down a few levels. But no, I think that was absolutely the strat. I mean, same thing with Yorm too, right? Like if you're on Yorm and you're behind and all you can do is build a bunch of damage and ult into team fights, like you're going to have an impact. You're going to disrupt the enemy team just as much as you would if you were on level with everyone else. I think that's the strat.
But now you got 2 people doing that then, because that's Jake's play style.
Yeah, it's true.
I know, right?
That's
it's
thing where
really
it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just provide the CC or be there, stand there. It doesn't matter what level you are. You got the CC.
Yep.
All right.
I think Cthulhu's the exception to that rule, right? Because like if you're behind, it doesn't matter if you ult. If you're down 3 levels, you
don't want to get behind.
You're gonna get chewed up.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Ghost versus E United, and I only have one note for this set, which is clean from Ghost. Is there anything that stood out to you guys about this Ghost in a United set at all, or was it just a simply sort of a clean win for the Ghost boys?
I think you could just put in brackets next to that, methodical,
Sure.
and you'll be exactly correct.
Methodical.
It pretty much was methodical from Ghost. They didn't really take too much risk, and they still managed to get away with, dismantling this E United team left and right. And it wasn't just one lane that fell apart for United. It was one lane fell, then the next one shortly after.
Yeah.
And it looked very clean for Ghost, like almost like a scrim for them, to say the least.
Sure. I love Sylvanas, but I've asked about it before. A lot of people are not happy about Sylvanas. I mean, why is there a tree in this first game?
That was a really good comp and a good draft, though. I actually really like that. Sure. Even from being a super Ghost fanboy, I saw that comp and I went, "Oh, wow! They could actually maybe be in some trouble here." Because you got Erlang, Ul, Freya, Sylvanas with the tier.
Yeah,
you are going to be in the center, walking everybody to whatever it is that needs to be shredded. That's it. Sure. It's you're kind of supporting the support in that regard while he supports you from the inside, and then you just kind of keep moving on. Snoopy decided to go mobile tree,
the zoom tree.
I've seen that build. I've done that build. It's funny. It's definitely like, you're not going to catch me, I'm not going to die kind of thing. But he didn't build anything that would make it go, I'm going to root myself in place with my team and keep us moving.
Sure.
He just kind of got run over once you got to the mid game.
I also don't feel like you can pick Sylvanas into Hebo, Hu Yi, two of the best gods at dealing with the Sylvanas, just because the slows that they have. And then once more on top of that, there's a Hombat and a Hercules on the other side. By the way, how did PBM get Hercules 2 games in a row? I will not understand that. I will never understand that. But the tree was just sort of cannon fodder, so there wasn't really much opportunity for Snoopy to engage, because if he did, he just died instantly to whoever was around, whether it be Sam or Mike, pushing them into Captain Twig and Panda Cat's damage.
Any other thoughts about this game? I mean, I did say it was a clean set. I think both games at the end, it was more than almost a 10k gold lead for Ghost at both of the games, and I think they were ended both pretty quickly. I know the website doesn't give us the game time, but just by checking the gold here, it seems like they were not terribly long games.
Yeah, first game was just shy of 26 minutes. The second one was 23 and a half.
Yeah, so pretty quick and clean from Ghost.
I like the E United drafting this time around. It reminded me of Phase 1 when they started drafting these very sort of like, well, then it was the PvE style and artillery, and they wouldn't work, but then after a few weeks, they started working. They started clicking. They started to really, we figured out what we're going to do with it and the identity for it. In Game 2, they also went Horus Achilles, 2 frontliners, stunning right in front of them with a Kali and Oleron and a Freya. So they're just both going to walk at something, hold it down, and then 3 auto attackers are going to completely shred it. They got answered, unfortunately, with Ghost having just straight up dive. That's it. It's like they've also gone against this team enough to know if one of us gets caught out, we can't run away. We have to take that fight. And that's it. They were fearless now. They went in, took the fights. Herwin was getting jumped on the all around.
For Hurry, that's it.
He was getting dove at the start of every fight. I don't think he existed.
No, I think it's very difficult for an all-around to exist against a Thor, just because the Thor lands down on you, and if you don't have beads, you have no opportunity to get your ult off in that fight, especially if it's the late game. It's just curtains. And I think the whole draft that E United had in that second game relied on Harrowwind being there for the Sanctified Field for it to work off. Just because the limited amount of CC that they had, well, I say limited amount of AoE CC. It's not something like the Final K Shin Chen or the Sanford Soccer Thors and Hombats, the Hombats from Game 1.
Yeah.
It was just more centralized, almost single target CCs and stuns, which you sort of need to complement with that Oleron ult. And if the Oleron wasn't there, the composition sort of did fall apart, and as did United.
I think we see this again later. I think they're gonna patch out the problems that they had for this, because it is super single target. It's almost like they anticipated we're gonna pick one person off and then go do something else, and never actually take a full on team fight. But they got the team fight straight in the face.
Yeah. It's kind of difficult to avoid team fights when one person's global and the other person could just teleport to the fight very quickly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Any final thoughts about this set before we move on to the next set of the week, which is Renegades?
Yeah, I think
versus
United are still showing signs of life for me.
Sure.
You know, I don't feel like they got blown out. I think Ghost just played really clean. You know, I actually expect them to do better in the coming weeks. I think they're getting their footing finally. They just unfortunately they're up against Ghost, and you know, I think that's not exactly when you win for a confidence game.
Sure.
No.
All right.
Maybe the support skill a little less daring. First two picks, Hercules, Habois, and then you go Sylvanas.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
No. The worst. That's the worst thing. The worst part about a Habois Sylvanas matchup, you know what it is? The 2. And it's not the 3. It's not the It's not the 1. It's the 2, because it just puts it underneath you, and it's almost like a root. You're just so slow.
Yep. Yeah, I don't understand what the lower ranked team's obsession is with immobile supports. But when a large percentage of your problem is poor positioning and overextension, why are you picking the most punished god for that? Like Ymir, Sylvanas. I mean, I can't think of any others, but like, you know, those are the two that jump out to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like why, you know, if it's very obvious that a lot of your issues come from overextension, like what are you doing, man? Like we saw it with Bobby when they first started winning. Right, they put him on the horse. That god literally can go as far in as he wants, and as long as you don't cripple him or stun him out of his 3, like he's gonna get out.
Yeah,
and you know, and then they started winning. You know, so I don't know what the obsession is, but I don't get it.
Sure. All right, then moving on to Renegades versus Obey, and my notes here say Ama had another good showing for the Obey boys. I think Ducky played it in game 2. Looked very good in Ducky's hands. The other thing I wanted to say is, you know, a little bit of these eager strats from Sino and Wolfie. I don't know, Erling Shannon Tarai has me feeling all sorts of, you know, eager nostalgia. What are your guys' initial thoughts about Renegades versus Obey?
It took this long for them to pick Wolfie's Ra, and I'm surprised. I am very surprised.
Sure.
A couple weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it took them this long to pick Wolfie's Ra as a confidence pick rather than as a let's just pick it and see what happens.
He's got one of the nastiest Raws in the league.
For sure, for sure.
Really good on that character. I'm just happy because Ra's coming back. Ra's one of my favorite characters. He's getting another buff.
Oh my god, he's going to be so annoying next patch.
Oh yeah.
But like, it gets rid of one of the big
frustrations. I just know he's getting buffed.
The biggest frustration factor while playing Ra is you activate your 2 and you just get slowed to oblivion still. You now have it as a cleanse from slows for 0.6 seconds. That's the big thing. In fact, it's got the same treatment as Kukulkan.
Sure.
He's got the heals to back it himself up. He's got good wave clear alongside that, and he's got the same slow immunity and a bit of safety whilst compared to the Kukulkan. He's just, I'm saying it right now, he's straight up just a better Kukulkan. There is no reason to pick Kukulkan these days. You just pick Ra instead.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Yes. Which I'm okay with, because I hate when Kukulkan's in the meta.
Yeah, because no one ever has a game plan for it. It's just back it up, try not to lose it. Like they don't show face until you're about to do an objective or a Phoenix or something. That's just the Kukulkan playstyle. I can't stand it.
Just Kukulkan. Stand under tower, clear wave, rotate when we tell you to. You've done your job.
I'm just happy to see these like big, long-range burst mages come into play, because like that's exciting smite to watch. Like I think the most boring smite is when you've got like Merlin and hunters in the mid lane and everything else. I think we talked about this on another episode, but like when I first started watching SPL, I was in like late season 3, and like you got like Scylla and Ra and Thoth when he was still like the cannon, right? Where you're down 10k on the Phoenix, you got the last ditch defense, and all of a sudden out of nowhere you just laser down 2 people, and like you can come back off of that, or you have this really tense team fight somewhere, and all of a sudden like you're the guy, it's on your shoulders to make it happen and change the tide of the battle. Like that's cool. Not this like tick damage auto attack bullshit where you just sit there and you fall asleep while you're watching the games.
What a guy to have the game on his shoulders,
Oh,
with the setup. He was I was watching, it was Mifflin and Dolson kind of keeping track of all the shots that he was taking. There was one where they had the CC set up, but I think he beats it or something. I don't know, whoever it was that they set it up.
It was off of Sino's CC. I know exactly the one you're talking about.
And he got away from it, and you think, oh man, Wolfie's about to miss. But it's as if he anticipated it. He anticipated them getting away from that and still hit it. Had them both screaming, had me screaming. Oy.
Oh,
give me
I'm thinking of a different one
right here.
I'm thinking of a different one then, because Wolfie was on my porch. We were talking about it. I was like, dude, like you popped off on Raw. Like, that's awesome. And he's like, yeah, I missed this one ultimate. I'm still mad about it. And I'm like, like what? Like, he's like,
that is
Sino said
Wolfie.
he had
That
the
is
CC.
Wolfie.
He's like, Sino said he had the CC, and then he used it, but he didn't call it. And so I had to freewheel it. And I was like, oh, and you missed? He's like, yeah, it was like the one shot I missed the whole game. And I was like, dude, like, how do you live with yourself?
No, that is Wolfie. That's 100%
I'm like
Wolfie.
a
I believe that.
7% ability hitter. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
No, he's got to go. He's going for broke. I think they found an answer to their not their support problem, but it did seem like the pace had to be going off of inbound. This allows Sino and Wolfie to kind of just these two take a fight of their own accord without the support being there. It's like, here, I'll set you up for the mid, I'll set you up on the jungler, just take a shot. It's just these two going off in their like guerrilla tactics, and it overrides the whole need for a 3v3 mid combat.
Yeah, I just speaking on this set in particular, like I kind of hate that like oh, of course they beat Renegades, they have Row. Like I thought they played well. Like they came with a game plan. They fixed a lot of mistakes they were making. To your point, Frost, and they like didn't play around that core mid 3v3. Like I don't know. It's like people who watch the game will sit there and be like, oh, well, they look a lot better. They're executing cleanly. And then like the masses go, yeah, they beat the hell out of Row or whatever. They kind of did the second game, especially when it was Mulan and they corner cancel on the blue buff and everything like that.
Yeah, I was about to mention that.
That was as a solo lane, you sort of feel for that.
Yeah. I don't know that I would have done that, although I do that every night. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I don't think they're gonna ever get the credit that they deserve. I mean, they could be the top team in the league, and there'll be some excuse for it. That's my biggest gripe with the SPL right now.
I think they played extremely well, and I'm not taking anything away from them because, like you said, they are one of the most mechanically gifted teams, I'd say, out there. It just hasn't really worked out for them too well. But they also did catch Renegades on what can only be described as an off day.
Yeah.
Wasn't a particularly great set from them as a whole. I don't think too much more to say about that. I mean, in game one, specifically, if I have a Najjar support, if I have a Cerberus in the solo lane, I don't want Merlin as my mid laner. I want Goth, I want Ra, I want Kukulkan, I want Isis, I want something with a big, heavy, just put them right here and I will kill them sort of ultimate sort of
I
playstyle.
despise that pick so much, especially after the Merlin bug change, whatever it is, where he can't put his damage underneath you.
Yeah.
I don't understand the pickup of a Najjar into no setup whatsoever. You got a Rom, a Pele, sorry, Merlin. That's what he mentioned, and that's it. There's no burst there. It's all overtime. We're gonna shred something. That's not what Najjar's for. It's I'm gonna take you out of the fight, and when you come back down, we're all just gonna point at you.
Yeah. And so whenever Awesome Jake took somebody up into the sky, it was pretty much guaranteed that they were gonna live on landing, unless Ben got like the best combo off on the Merlin. It didn't happen.
Right.
feel like Neja works with those big ults. Like that's it. Like that's the only time I would ever feel like playing Neja. Just
Big
you can't
old,
take-
or there's somebody who does a lot of damage on the ground. You're trying to take it away. I could see the logic. Maybe he's trying to get rid of Set, while he's on the ground ulting. But aside from that, I couldn't see a reason to pick a Naja here.
No.
Unless you want to take it away and you don't want to get raw sniped. Inbound does have a Naja.
I guess so. I do want to say that I think Inbound, this might have been the best set that we've seen out of Inbound so far in the SPL. Is that your guys' sort of opinion as well?
I'd say it's up there. I wouldn't say it's necessarily been the absolute best from Inbound, but he had a good 2 games on this one. Provided good enough space, provided decent setup for the rest of his team, but most importantly, it didn't feed.
Yeah, definitely.
I still, whenever I go into my Smite Shrine, still got a picture of Bobby's game against PK. I think that was his cleanest game, but this one wasn't too bad. Maybe Renegades did him a favor by banning out the Amir.
Yeah. I think that's, I'm sure Obey was happy to see that.
Just hear Bobby going, no, the rest of his team go, they banned out the Emir. What's it? They're going, yes, finally, something different, let's go.
I said that to him, man. I was like, hey, look, Renegades did you a favor.
All right, now the last set of a week, an unfortunate shortened week due to circumstances, which we will explain in the next game. But the last set of this week was Sanguine versus Space Station Gaming. I think a lot of us expected that this one would be, a big, long set, 3 games, something like that. But SSG basically, they're riding high and really, really destroyed Sanguine here. And all I have is more great Ama games from Nika. So if you guys want to wax poetic about Ama being great again, here you go. Here's your chance.
That's just how it is. Sanguine is SSG Light, or SSG is Sanguine Prime.
Sure.
It feels like they have the exact same style. SSG just has more rhyme for the reason, more bang for the buck, and they pull it off just way better. It's a mirror match, but you're going against your shadow clone who knows every dark little secret that you have.
Sure.
I think also, whilst Nika grabbed all the headlines in this set, Rafa and Vo in the dual lane they popped off in this set. They got the exact same picks in both games, and I don't know. It goes back to that thing. If they're banning out 3 gods, 2 of which are against Dardes, and the other one is the Freya against Vo, understandable that one. But then they're giving Nika the Amaterasu again. They're giving Rafa and Vo the exact same dual lane that they just controlled the game with, and just allowed them to shred these objectives and take fights where they really wanted to take them. And they just play them again, and it's the exact same story. Teams just, and I feel like they did better last season in the best of 5s rather than the best of 3s.
Sanguine, that is?
But they
or SSG?
Better. I think both. I think all teams in the SPL just adapted better during the best of 5 sets. Their picks and bans were a lot more varied. Their bans specifically were more tailored towards the set rather than towards the team that they were facing. Or the meta, sorry, as well. So, I don't know. The best of 3s that we have in this season sort of... I don't know if that is the biggest reason or if that is the reason for this going on, but it does feel like teams are just sticking to their guns rather than reacting to what happened in Game 1.
Sure. Right, Frost, anything to add about this set?
So I think it was the biggest disappointment of the weekend because I think we were all expecting a 2-1 barn burner, and it just kind of seemed like Sanguine came out and just laid an egg. I think that was my disappointment. It was that we didn't get more Smite on Sunday.
Sure.
Kind of like it was over by like 4:30.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think Sanguine executed well. I think they could have done a lot better. Space Station looked clean as always, and they are establishing why they are the current leader in my eyes.
Sure.
I think it's them and Ghost. in my
I
opinion,
think you
there.
have sort of a top 3 right now forming of SSG, Ghost, and Radiance. Although we might have to talk about Radiance in a bit.
Yeah.
Sanguine right now just occupy that 4th spot,
guys,
just
pause.
touching on
Dog's
the top
losing her
3.
shit.
All right. Then just underneath that, you have PK, Obeya pushing up there as well. Renegades and United right now occupying the bottom 2.
Sure.
Ooh, you put Renegades that low? I like it.
I think that's just based on the last couple of 2 or 3 weeks. Yes, they've been performing quite well, but they've also just hit a big stumbling block this week, and that's got to factor into any sort of thing. Next week they could just bounce back. They could swipe the floor with their competition. They could just beat Ghost 2-0, beat Renegades, beat Space Station 2-0, and I'm just gonna go, okay, yeah, they're a top seed again. That's just how this league is.
Yeah.
All the teams have the potential to beat each other. Make no mistake about it. Just because I said that United and Renegades are in those bottom 2 slots right now, doesn't mean they have no chance of winning. They always do.
See, I hold the chance that it's more so the mid tier ones. They can take games off the top, they can lose games off the bottom, but the bottom compared to the top, that's more so like the how badly are you trolling or how depressed are you right now? These are sort of wellness check games.
All right, I guess that brings us to sort of the elephant in the room of this week, which is this postponed game between PK and Radiance. And I know I've checked the schedule now, and it seems like this game will be replayed in the last week of the SPL. What do you guys know about this? I know maybe there's not so much that you guys can say, but this is kind of an unusual thing to happen in our league. What are you guys' thoughts on the postponement, and is there anything interesting that you thought this could happen? Like, could this affect some of the games in the future to any degree?
I'm not saying they should have. I'm not condoning it, nor am I saying they shouldn't have. I'm just surprised that they didn't DQ or anything. They're actually postponing the match,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it, right? I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
Cyclone made a tweet that said there's coronavirus in the apartment.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Right.
Cyclone made a tweet that said that? I did not know that.
Coronavirus in
Yeah.
the apartment. I hate quarantine, or welcome to quarantine, or something like that, right? Like that was the tweet that went out, right? So assuming that happened, one of them went out, or multiple, and gave the rest of them corona, or they're in a position where a large part of their team can't play due to corona.
Sure.
Right? That is my assumption based on Cyclone's tweet. Because there's not much else that would explain why. And who was supposed to play? It was Radiance Knights?
Yeah, Radiance versus Pittsburgh Knights.
So the Knights already had a set that weekend, right? So it's clearly not a problem with them.
Yeah.
The only other thing I can think of is some kind of internet issue, which I highly doubt. Because they're in apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And it's too timely with Cyclone's tweet, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Using that as the assumption, my guess is that their set against Sanguine this week is probably postponed too. Maybe, unless they're on the road to recovery and they're feeling fine. But I think that's absolutely the right call. If that's the case where it is just like you don't want to force somebody to take a DQ because of a global pandemic, right? And I mean, you got people who, like our neighbor got it, right? And they've been getting their food delivered. They literally haven't left the house. And it could have been something as stupid as a mail person coughs on your mail.
Right.
So to punish them for that, I think is a little wrong. I think, if that is the case, so I don't think anybody should have been DQ'd.
No.
You don't want to eliminate the set because that could affect the standings.
Right.
Actually, if anything, if I'm PK, I'm kind of happy with it because now I get 8 weeks to prepare for one of the top seeded teams versus playing them now. And I get a break to either scrim or work on something else or what have you, right? So I don't know. I don't think there's really a downside for anybody. If that is the case, and it is based around Cyclone's tweet where he's talking about COVID in the house, then makes a lot of sense.
COVID in the house.
It's basically what he said in the tweets.
Yeah,
I did.
I was just gonna say that.
I did find it here. It just says COVID-19 in the apartment. Love quarantining. I mean, so he's not mincing his words about it, I guess.
Yeah, my read into that. We talked about it before. My read into that is he was quarantining, and maybe some other people didn't take it as seriously as he was.
I can read it. I can read that as well. And I think going on to the question of whether the set should have been a DQ or not. I'm 99% sure it should not have been a DQ, but there's this 1% thing that tells me if there was something that went on, like one person went out to a place that they've been specifically told by that organization, by hires themselves to not go to, he goes to anyway, and he gets corona, then you sort of make the argument that, I think if the entire team went, not just one person, if the entire team went out to a place that's known as a COVID hotspot, against the wishes of the org and high res, then you sort of have the situation there where a DQ would be sensible.
Sure.
But if it's just one person, the rest of the team has no control over that, then postponement is the correct call.
Yeah, but there's also so many other factors that go into it. Like all these guys are door dashing, right? So you got 5 people coming in the door, right? You could go out, like I've been out with a mask in Home Depot and have been fine. And and then you have my neighbor who gets it from their mail or from a delivery or something like that, right? Or food delivery, right? So I think like pinning it on, unless it's just absolute negligence, and the state of Georgia's open too, right? Like everything's open,
right?
Like we, for whatever reason, we literally just don't care here. That just, I don't know. I think there's too many variables to like pin it on one person, even if somebody's being a little reckless.
Yeah.
Be like, this is your problem.
It's that time of the week again. Time for our analysts to give their picks for next week's games. Let's start with Ghost versus Renegades. And I think I'll start with you, Wraithyn. Who you got in this set?
Ghost. 2-0, over quick, 25 minutes or less each game.
Sure.
God dang.
Alpha? Or AJ, I guess?
Pretty much the same. Ghost 2-0, 24 minutes or less each game.
All right, Frost, is this
if SOT's playing, 23 if Rose playing?
Okay.
I'll shake you on that hand.
Rose, it going to be less than 25 minutes for each of these games?
That's the savage alert right there in the background.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. Somebody followed me on Twitch.
Frost? Ghost versus Renegade?
Yeah, Ghost 2-0, but if Solo or Troll's back, it's going to be pre-30 minutes. If Rose playing, it's going to be going longer than 30.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But I guess that's 2-0 from everyone. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if it depends on whether it's Ro or Solo, who is in the solo lane, unfortunately, with how strong we've seen Ghost be recently. I'm going to give it to Ghost 2-0 as well. All right, the next set in Week 7 is PK versus E United. AJ, let's start with you on this one. Who you got in PK versus E United?
I have PK, but I'm going to say it's going to be PK 2-1.
Okay.
I think that E United have a chance to take a game off this set, especially if they are able to identify some of the weaknesses that PK have shown. But I still expect PK to overcome this set.
Sure. Frost?
E United 2-0. I think E United figured out their composition. They're going to pull out some strange artillery fire, some kind of rundown, grab one person, murder them, run away. Whatever it is that they figured out, Knights is going to get the brunt end of it.
Sure. Right?
E United 2-1.
Oh, man.
They're coming back. They're playing well. I'm a Knights guy.
Yeah.
But I'm a realist.
Sure.
Love to see the Knights win. I think E United are on their way up. I think the Knights have kind of plateaued a little bit. And E United 2-1.
All right. My inner Zapman fanboy is coming out again, so I got this PK 2-0. Stop those E United boys.
Stop them from what? They haven't won anything yet.
Well, not stop them. I said stomp them.
Oh, stomp them. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here thinking they got to win at some point, maybe.
Okay, the next set this week is Radiance versus Sanguine. And like we mentioned a little bit earlier when we talked about postponement, we don't know if this one is actually going to happen or not yet. But we will assume that it is happening. Let's start with you, Frost. Radiance versus Sanguine. Who you got in this set?
If it happens, I think it's going to be Sanguine. It's going to be 2-0. I don't think Radiance is going to be in tip-top shape, not with the COVID running around. And these Sanguine, these are my people. We have the Voodoo. We got the Vaporu. We got the Alka-Seltzer, whatever. They are healthy as horses right now. 2-0, Sanguine.
Sure. So vamos Sanguine from Frost. What about you, Wraith? Who you got?
2-0 Sanguine. If Radiance does have COVID, they're either not going to play well, they won't have gotten any practice. And if somebody did bring it into the house, like AJ had alluded to, my guess is that they are all at a point where they hate each other.
All right, AJ. Radiance versus Sanguine.
I think just got to go with everybody else in this one. Sanguine 2-0. I mean, there could be disharmony among the Radiance boys if it is just one person. If it's the entire team, they'll probably be a bit bonded, but they'll need to come over the COVID first and get a couple weeks practice in. So if you're going to be going against Renegades, this is the time to do so. And I think Sanguine have struck gold here, and they're going to get the 2-0.
Sure. I sort of feel the same way, but I think Radiance is probably good enough to take a game of it. I think it'll be 2-1 to Sanguine this week. All right, let's move on to the next set of this week, which is Space Station Gaming versus Obey. And we've seen Obey do pretty well this past week, but they're coming up against SSG, which might be the best team in the league. Let's start with you, Wraith. Space Station versus Obey. Who you got?
Oh, I would love to see Obey do well here. I think it's SSG, but 2-1.
2-1 SSG for Wraith. All right, AJ, let's go to you next.
That's me not voting for Obey.
I know.
But still hoping.
I see this actually being the most difficult set to call over the entire week.
Sure.
Honestly. I think with the way that Obey have been playing recently, the form that they found recently, it's just... But I still have to go with Space Station here, and Obey are going to play well. They're going to play extremely well, but I think Space Station do take this 2-0. It's not going to be easy for them, but it'll be a 2-0.
Frost, let's finish up here. Space Station versus Obey. Who you got?
You want the real, like the reality, or do you want this crackpot theory that I got brewing right now? I'll tell you.
Let's hear the theory and then reality.
Everybody has the reality.
2-1 SSG.
Okay.
Crackpot theory. 2-0 Obey. Sino's been brewing this strange anti-auto attack meta thing that's been causing some severe losses. SSG are playing that meta now.
Sure.
They are drafting double ADCs, magical, physical, and Cherry's been on auto attack characters. If anything, now Sino, bring out your warriors again. And Chot got buffed, so why not?
Will they be playing on those?
Maybe not. Maybe not.
No, they won't be.
So now it's Tuesday,
but it's a way to celebrate.
That's true. All right, so SSG 2-1 is your actual reality pick?
Yeah, the real one is SSG 2-1. I think they could take a game off for the same reasoning, but I don't think they'll 2-0 them.
Sure. Okay, next game this week. Oh, I forgot to give my prediction. I think it'll be SSG 2-0. I think the SSG boys, their mental is in a good place. I've seen Raph playing a lot of Dead by Daylight and Fall Guys. And so if you're not streaming Smite, that means things are going good in scrims as far as I'm concerned. So I think they're playing well and they'll take it on a 2-0. All right, let's go to the next game this week. Ghost and PK, both of them have they're playing a doubleheader this week. AJ, let's start with you on Ghost versus PK. Who you got?
I got Ghost taking it out 2-0. I think the games will go on a bit longer, though. I think both games over 30 minutes, but Ghost take the win.
Sure. Frost? Ghost versus PK?
Just from having spent a bit of time with Slaney last week, I think they've got the confidence in them for sure. So 2-0 for Knights. I could see them dropping a game. I don't think they're
2-0 for Ghost or 2-0 for Knights?
2-0 for Ghost. My bad. It was 2-0. If they're still slumping, because I don't think the last games that they had and going against Renegades, those aren't really going to be confidence boosters.
Mm-hmm.
Not for them anyhow.
Sure.
So I think 2-0 Ghost.
Wraith, what about you? Ghost versus PK.
Oh God. I'll do a 2-1 Ghost.
Yeah.
I like, it's the same thing, right? It's like reality. It's like, what do you want to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's the reality? Like, I want the Knights to win.
Sure.
I want to see them kind of break this like plateau that they've been at. I want to see them take down one of the top 3, and I want to see them do well. But I don't know that they're there yet, right? Like,
sure.
And so I'll give them a game, but I think Ghost takes the set.
All right. Well, you're voting with your head. I'm gonna vote with my heart. PK 2-0. Come on, boys, get it done. Chuck, break the meta or something. Let's do it. All right. The last set of this week is Space Station Gaming versus the Renegades. I think we'll start with you on this one, Frost. Who do you have in Space Station Gaming versus the Renegades?
SSG all the way. I don't think Renegades has a means to draft into, draft against, draft their own comp against SSG. I think that's going to be, it would be a stomp, but they just don't play that way. It's going to be 2-0, maybe 30-minute games.
Sure. Right? SSG versus Renegades?
2-0, quick ones.
SSG?
Yeah, SSG.
Yeah.
I think Renegades, I think this will be their bounce back week. I think we'll see more out of them next week.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, having Solo take a break from the team, maybe not. Maybe they come back and they take it to him. But until I see it, I don't believe it.
Sure. All right, let's finish up with you, AJ. Space Station versus Renegades. Who you got?
Okay, let me just quickly check all my notes here. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's Space Station 2-0.
All right. I think I'll go with the Space Station boys as well. 2-0 here. Renegades did not look super great last week, and hopefully that was, the worst of it, and everything gets better from here on out, but I don't think they have the strength to take down Space Station Gaming here.
It's also rough, too, with that break that he's taking, because there's like two kinds of breaks. You take a break from the team, the whole team takes a break, or you've got that Dennis Rodman, I just lost my motivation, I need to go wild out, come back in.
Yep.
SOT doesn't strike me as a Dennis Rodman. It's more of like the team environment, the atmosphere that we have here is just not suited.
Right. All right, well,
a little walkabout.
Yeah. That's it for the picks this week. Since we have Alphajackal here with us, I think we'll just open it up for a maybe general discussion about Smite and the SPL in general. And if you guys have any questions, Wraithyn and Frost, please go ahead and start asking them.
You've been at the forefront of one of my favorite teams, the rival, all that. You understand that that play style that Ghost has of high risk, high reward. We either win together or we lose together. What is it is it from just all the players, the chemistry? Is it a difficult thing to teach? Because you've got, like Wolfie over here is kind of struggling with Obey. That talent's not gone. He still looks like rival Wolfie, the player, but not the team. So what do you think is the issue there for him?
I think for that sort of play style, you have to have almost an arrogant confidence, not just about yourself, but about your entire team. You basically walk into those objectives, not saying we're going to risk it, saying we're going to take it. Don't care if they come in. This is going to be our objective. And it's just having the confidence about each and every single individual parts of the play as a whole. And maybe that entire confidence isn't there yet because they haven't gone on a massive winning spree. That confidence gets built up from winning scrims consistently. And that's really difficult to do these days in this sort of SPL environment, I think.
You're telling me it's Ducky's fault. He's not arrogant at all. Very humble young man.
There's always the voice of reason. Just drown it out.
Sure.
I remember those old comms. You got Kalas, you got Vote. Not sure what he's saying. Wolfie, Ice. I think Ice was the voice of reason, but even then they all had that. Yeah, we're going in. We're going to take it. So that's somewhat lacking in a way here. And then you also coached a little bit with SSG. What would that issue be? They've not really shifted. Wolfie was sort of top of the world, now is trying to make that climb back up. Whereas Barra, Ven, they've been in this spot before. Why are they consistently here?
It's honestly difficult to say, because back on Space Station there were a multitude of issues that the second you fixed one, just put that all the way down, suddenly another one popped up elsewhere. And it's just like starting to play whack-a-mole with all those different issues. One point, it could be the comms are a bit down. So you start to bring up the comms and, go over exactly what should and shouldn't be said. Okay, that's good. Oh, all of a sudden we're, not warding as much as we really should be, or warding in incorrect spots or incorrect timings. Okay, let's bring that up. Oh, we're not calling invades anymore. Okay, let's keep an eye on some timers. Let's do this. Oh, all of a sudden we're not ganking at the right spots, or we're not really getting we're not really prioritizing certain things in the drafts that allow us to play the correct way. And sometimes the meta does shift very quickly. And one of the biggest issues for veteran players, I feel, players back from season 1, season 0, even season 2, is that when the meta shifts very quickly, they find it difficult to settle into it and find the best things of that meta, because they had their old ways of doing things, and it could just it could take that time still.
Do you think any of them have sort of kind of hesitancy? In a way, it's sort of, you get into a new relationship, and the worst thing you can say is, well, I used to do this with my ex, It's sort of, you're not even taking into the new team environment. You're sort of trying to bring in the old ways.
No, I think Barra and Ven especially are always open to the new ideas, open to doing things a completely different way. Honestly, for Renegades, it could very well have just been that environment that was being created by Solo Troll, just because they were on a bit of a losing streak in scrims. And I honestly, I think that they have the best coach they could possibly have in Row. And these was part of the top end of the SPL for the longest time as well, but he dealt with teams with, big egos, big expectations, big personalities, and just managed to level them and get them working together as a unit. And that's exactly sort of the thing that Renegades and teams with Barracuda do need. They need everybody to be synergistic. They need everybody to be on the sort of the same page, especially when it comes to team fights. I think that's probably where a lot of struggles for Renegades have happened, is their positioning in team fights just hasn't been up to the same standard as everybody else in the league. And I think if they do manage to sort that out, they'll be a top end team.
And what do you feel about, like, say, Sanguine, who do have that sorted out in a way? They're very cohesive. I think that's kind of the running theme for this team, is they work well together. They seem very comfortable going to those team fights. What is it that stops them from being now in the conversation for like a top 3 thing? And in phase 1, maybe I discredited them a little bit, but it kind of worked out in the sense that I felt they weren't really a first place team. It was just the top 3 hadn't come into their own yet. They were really just kind of either underestimating them or just not playing the full form. Now, whenever it does come down to, all right, playing full form, Sanguine ends up 4th. What's stopping them from being that top 3?
Bit of a shift of meta. I also think that teams have figured out sort of the ways to beat Sanguine. You also have the rise of, like you said, Sanguine Prime in Space Station, just knocking them down a peg in the order, when before Space Station weren't playing up to full strength. And whilst they do have that cohesion, they do have that ability to wipe the floor with teams just through their team play alone. The teams that are above them can do the same thing, but they can do so in multiple different ways. They can do the slow burn game. They could do the come from behind victory. They could do we're going to snowball the game from left side. We're going to snowball the game from right side. We're going to wait for 17 minutes before we just blow the game out in 3 minutes from there on in. And for me, Sanguine, they almost have to get off to that good start if they're going to dominate the entire game. And if you have a limited amount of ways to win the game, it's it's a lot easier to shut out those avenues of victory and then make the other team lose.
I see that. And just because you mentioned this a while ago, I'll put you on the hot seat real quick. What's the biggest detriment to a player, be it mentality, lacking ability? Because you said you could take a team of diamonds and make them a pro team. What's like the worst characteristic you could have if you're trying to make it in the Smite League?
I think the worst one would be complacency. I think the complacent people are the ones that will either turn up to scrims and not try because they're just scrims, or they're the ones that won't turn up to scrims at all because they'll just play well on the big stage. They're the ones that will, they'll be adamant in their own picks and won't really listen to ideas come from everybody else. Those are the sort of players that could be grandmasters level in ranked, but just won't do well on a competitive team whatsoever, just because they're not open to the idea of it being a team game.
We're just gonna have that wolfy hunger, don't you? Where it's just one roll, it just can't sleep for that night.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a perfectionist, that's honestly a good thing to be if you're looking to get on a pro team. Be a perfectionist, be confident in your own ability, be slightly arrogant in your ability, but don't be complacent in you being right all the time. Don't be complacent in you not needing to practice. There's always something to improve upon. There's always a reason to go into scrims. There's always a reason to listen to other people's ideas, because you don't know all the answers. No one does.
Sure. I heard that you mentioned like having maybe like irrational confidence as a team is something that your old rival squad had. And I know the casters like to note a lot that your squad was particularly well known for like 50-50ing fire giants and other objectives. Do you think maybe some of that irrational confidence played into that sort of mentality to 50-50 objectives? And, is that maybe something intentional that you guys were trying to do during those times? Or is that just sort of how the game flow went?
Every single time we went onto an objective, we would always have an idea about what we wanted to do. So the second we go into fire giant, for example, we go, right, we're looking to secure this, or we're looking to bait them in for a fight. That would be the first thing we would decide.
Yeah.
Then as we're doing the objective, that would just constantly get talked about. Like, for example, Death and Kalas would go zone, or if Ice is playing someone like Thor, it'll just be one of them zoning. Ice goes up into the sky when we're near the securing threshold. Wolfie would have been in charge of basically saying, right, it's going down to 3,000 health, 2,000 health, burst now. It would just say, we'd call the threshold about where we want to burst just before we start the objective. And he would basically, when it gets close to that amount, Wolfie would say, hold, burst now. And would then burst it at the same time. He's throwing loads of abilities just to try and get a bit more damage in 1 second off, rather than just a Kraken, for example. We get Kraken plus Hail of Arrows and Bladed Arrow from an Ulla, just to try and out-secure a bit harder.
Sure.
But there's always this conversation going on throughout all of the objectives. Most of the time, it would just be, we're confident that we can secure this because we have that level of shot calling. We have the confidence we're going to secure this because we always had good burst in our compositions. That was always the number one thing we had somebody who could burst an objective, somebody that could secure an objective, whether that been Foe, whether that had been Wolfie. A couple times we didn't, but we still played as if we did, and it usually worked out because it was very difficult for their backliners, their securers, to get into the fight, because those were the ones that were prioritized to be zoned.
Sure. Mate, do you have any questions or?
No, I'm just listening, man. This is awesome. I feel like I don't get to talk to too many coaches.
Sure.
Here.
I don't know. I'm all out of things. So if you guys have anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, you have quite the prestige too, considering that the team went from like general nobodies to now they rival turned into the top 2 almost overnight. There's no way you talk about rival without talking about you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Go ahead, Red. You're about to start.
I just had a curiosity of like you look at a team like Obey, right? That's my boys, right? Like, what do they got to do? Like, what do you see as their biggest glaring issue? I think, there's the armchair quarterbacks of us who watch every weekend and think we know all the answers. But as somebody who's seen teams go from unsuccessful to successful, like, what do you think? What is it?
I think there's just been a bit too much variety in picks from Obey. I think they've gone from one extreme to the other in pretty much every single one of their lanes. Just focus on a subset of supports, focus on a subset of mid laners, focus on a subset of solo laners. Because a lot of people just say, oh, there's warriors and guardians in solo lane. No, there's more to it than that. You have your zoning warriors, you've got your lane bully warriors, you've got your team fight warriors. Just focus on one or two of those subsets at a time. Build compositions around those subsets that work well for you. And I think they should go specifically more towards the dual lane than anything else. Their picks have been varied massively throughout the entire season. Focus on that subset. If they want to play aggressive, if they want to give inbound these aggressive early game gods, then play to that strength. Look to draft the aggressive early game ADCs. Look to aggress those gank style junglers. Look to aggress those pressure heavy mid laners and play to that strength. Just keep on invading on that left hand side. Bully the dual lane, bully the mid laner, bully the jungler out of all of his farm on that Gold Fury side, and just smack them out of the water in the first 10 minutes.
All right. Hopefully they watch this.
Yeah. Or at least the extended cut, because I don't know if this will actually make it. But
yeah, thank you, though. No, that makes sense. I'm like, I don't know, because like I want to see him win. I want to see him do well.
Win as well. It's my boy Wolfie.
They've won twice. Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite mids, and that's been rough. It's been a heartache.
Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. I want to give a special shout out to our guest here, Alphajackal. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember that next week you can catch us on the Smite Game Twitch channel at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, September 10th. Other than that, if you have any thoughts on guests for this show or other pro interviews you'd like to see, be sure to DM me on Twitter at APAM2 or at APAM Productions. And as always, be sure to check out extended cuts from this episode and other episodes, as well as extended cuts of my interviews with pro players on the APAM Productions YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you guys next week.